Hi there everyone, welcome back to Weird Yard here in the loft, and this is going to be the first of a more extreme version of a set of videos that we've been doing over the last few months, and this is going to be old versus new retro review. And basically it's a case of comparing the most up-to-date version of a model with pretty much where it all began. And today I have got for you A4 Pacifics head-to-head, old versus new, Hornby Dublo on the left and Hornby on the right. Let's go. On the left we have Hornby Dublo, and on the right we have the newest model from Hornby, head to head, old versus new. This is Extreme Retro Review. In the late 1930s, Hornby Dublo brought to the market the then new gauge of 00, hence the name of the range, Hornby Dublo, spelt D-U-B-L-O, and the name stuck and became synonymous with high quality for the time. Now, one of their flagship models, introduced in fully valenced form as Sir Nigel Gresley in the late 1930s, was the A4. It was still running on the railways at the time, and the Hornby Dublo model was really quite finessed compared with anything that had been before in O gauge, and was very well received in the market. Despite the hiatus of the Second World War, the model was reintroduced into the range, but they dropped the clockwork versions that had been one of the options and stuck with three-rail electric. And the locomotive, following prototype practice, lost its valances, gained the full Walschaerts valve gear, and got a renumbering as number 7, Sir Nigel Gresley. Later on, when Hornby Dublo introduced the British Rail liveried versions, the model got a change of identity and became Silver King, number 60016, in this very fine BR green, fully lined with the early cycling lion crest. And it is in this form that I first got my taste of big tender locomotives as a child. This locomotive arrived second-hand in the Christmas of 1985, and it was under the Christmas tree. It had been somebody else's well-loved toy beforehand, but for me, this really was something special. Over the years, we went on to collect all of the other variants of the Hornby Dublo A4. It came out as 60030 as Golden Fleece, number 7, Sir Nigel Gresley, as said before, in the very attractive garter blue. And then also Mallard appeared as the later three-rail version with the late crest on the tender. But it's this model that always has a special place in my heart. From that Christmas of 1985, it arrived with a pair of tin plate coaches to go with it in the blood and custard livery, and I've always really loved this model. But how does it compare to its new counterpart? This is the very, very recent release. We actually reviewed it on the channel, of Miles Beaver, number 60026. Fitted with TTS sound, so if you want the full lowdown on this model, go back to that review and check it out. We're also going to post up a link below, which helps you find your own one of these if it really does take your fancy, and so it should. A very special model. But head-to-head retro review. How do the two models compare? In this centenary year of Hornby, we're going to be looking at a few of these old versus news, or the severe retro type. And I thought, first up, this was a really good head-to-head to take a look at. When you see them side by side like this, there is no contest, it has to be said. But what is the difference? What does best part of 70, 80 years actually mean to the difference between these models? Now you can see there the buffers are pretty much at the right height, but look at the difference. The rivet detail on Miles Beaver on the right is absolutely perfect. And on the left, we have really the most basic of valances here covering the cylinders. Well, there just isn't any cylinders whatsoever. The Walschaerts valve gear on the Hornby Dublo model is very, very basic indeed, but it is reliable and it does work. So all of these bits do go around. Now, I don't have a 3-rail test track to be able to show you this running. But hopefully we might be able to find some archive footage of it doing its thing. These were bulletproof reliable. They only had 2 real speeds, warp speed and stopped, but that was enough for these as they bludgeoned their way through the track. On cast zinc Mazak wheels, they had a really good weight to them. So I'm just lifting that off the track there, and yeah, there's a good weight that really did help it to pretty much stick to the track. Front bogie on there, well, this has a particularly, well, it's not very prototypical, but it worked. As you can see, it's pivoted from the middle, but back to a screw just underneath that pickup skate. You can see from those pickup skates, this has seen some degree of running over the years. In fact, these are replacement pickup shoes, such as the mileage that this venerable old locomotive has run. They were very reliable, still are very reliable. This example does still run, does work, and it's actually got a new lease of life, usually to be found entertaining my little nephew. Inside the cab, well, not a lot going on there. I'm going to tip this up into the light, and all you can see in there is the back of the motor. The motor itself is vertically mounted and drives the rear axle via a brass worm gear to that cog that you see there. So it's very, very direct, which means that this model doesn't do slow speed running. The rear bogie is, well, it's pivoted from the front. The actual bogie sides are fairly substantial. There's not too much of a gap underneath there, but there is a gap. And it connects to the tender via this circular drawbar at the back. And if we move on to the tender, we've just got that pin at the front, attached to the front bogie, 8-wheel tender, with the Pico style coupling on the back there. Nicely done. It's a fully cast frame on this with some relief detail, but very, very basic. Tinplate sides, and the top is this sort of plastic moulding, which you can see at the front there. Age has made these distort a little bit, so it just ramps up at the front, and you can see there it's having a few issues. It is still firmly attached, but in all honesty, it is showing its age. But for its age, this coal load was actually pretty reasonable compared with what had gone before. We have a representation of the tender corridor connection on the back, and some very basic moulded on buffers there. Again, zinc Mazak. And actually, I know that a lot of people run scared of zinc Mazak, but what these show is that when you get the mix right, these are incredibly stable castings, so there's no hint of the old Mazak rot on these. And this locomotive probably dates from the mid-1950s, and it's still going strong. Not a hint of any white crustiness anywhere on there. No expansion, contraction, nothing breaking off. So it just shows when you do zinc Mazak right, it really will last. In terms of other detail, we've got some firebox, I think these are washout plugs on there. A few other bits of detail is part of the actual casting, and it comes with these metal steel. You can see ever so slight surface rusting on there, but nothing too bad. They are quite chunky, but they do work. We've got lining, which is transfer applied as far as I can tell, and you can see it does chip off over the years, but it's, you know, most of it's still hanging on there. And the roof of the cab is very, very basic, and we can also see the parting seam from the mould down the middle. Single chimney, whistle on the front, separately applied brass detail, and then we have the raised front number on there, and the kind of the bonnet effect that was very characteristic of these locomotives. A representation of a 3-link coupling and some brass buffers on there. The one on the left has been exposed to damp at some point, which is why it looks a little bit crusty, but nothing that can't be fixed with a good clean. So overall, a good, solid, reliable model. and it does look like an A4. However, when we come to the new model, it really is clear that technology has moved on, and in the run-up to this centenary year, Hornby has rebirthed this model in an amazing form. It's been a great model for quite some time, and I've been very, very pleased to have a number of these in my collection, but this version has been slightly refitted to be able to take sound in the tender, as we dealt with in the review of this. Now, some of the features that I touched on that Hornby Dublo model, I'm going to just show you on this. I'm going to very carefully roll it onto its side. Don't want to damage it, obviously. But the front bogie, we've got a prototypical centre pivot on these, which really does make it graceful as it goes around the track. It makes a huge difference, and it's that kind of an attention to detail that I love with these Hornby models. The rear bogie there, you can see, has flangeless wheels, although the flanged wheels were supplied in the pack to be fitted if you either have very gentle curves on your track or want this for a display case. And that means that the rear bogie is actually part of the chassis casting. It doesn't move, but that then does mean that we have absolutely no air gap underneath whatsoever. The detail on the tender chassis as well is there to be seen. It really is something special. Now, this model is presented with the non-corridor tender, which is a version which Hornby Dublo never did, but Hornby do both versions of the tender, so they are there available for you to have in your collection. In terms of the cab roof, well, you can really see the detail there that is just completely lacking on the Hornby Dublo model. And actually this top-down view does let me line them up and show you in terms of length. The Hornby Dublo model is ever so slightly too short. But that's fairly common for the period. You know, at the end of the day, I never noticed for a very, very long time, and it looked just fine on my layout as a child, so I wasn't too bothered. But the Hornby model is just, well, it's just streets ahead. You can see the difference on there, and the lining as well. Gone are those transfers, and in are this very, very fine tempo printing. The handrails are super, super fine. They look almost like just they're made of like gossamer fine thread compared to those chunky old Hornby Dublo ones. And we've got the representation of the whistles that is lacking on the Hornby Dublo model. We've got all those roof hatches that do slide open and shut. That is just an amazing attention to detail. In the cab itself, we have got full back head detail, as we outlined in the review of this model, which is a far cry from just looking at the back of the motor on the old Hornby Dublo model. So, as you can see, centenary year, Hornby delivered one of their flagship models, and they really didn't skimp on the detail. In terms of a pure head-to-head review, the Hornby model really is head and shoulders above anything else that I've seen for an A4 Pacific. It is an amazing model, and it's great to see that Hornby have not neglected over the years to keep this model beyond up to date. They've kept pace with technology to bring you the greatest A4 Pacific, in my opinion. But that's where it all began, the Hornby Dublo A4. This is a venerable old model, and against the newer model, it looks very much like the toy that it is. But this is a toy that gave pleasure to millions for a great, great many years. And still out there are some of these still giving pleasure to this day. So from the old to the new, I think the new won, but the old does still hold its own. And it holds a place in so many people's hearts for that retro nostalgia fantasticness. So there we have it, old versus new. We have retro in the left corner, and we have bang up-to-date Hornby in the right. Hornby have really not rested on their laurels over the past 70 or 80 years, and they've brought us now what could be considered almost the definitive A4 Pacific, and it is a truly amazing model. But to the left we have the model where it pretty much all began, originally in the guise of Sir Nigel Gresley and then later as this Silver King. This is the model that brought pleasure to a great many people over a great many years, and it still holds an affectionate place in my heart. But in terms of finesse of a model, well, it's very clearly a toy. The new Hornby model wins hands down, but that's not to say that there's too much to take away from the model where it all began. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also subscribe to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, up here in Weir Yard saying you take really good care of yourself. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Alan, oorail.co.uk and Tepic. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knobty Mouse. Thanks and catch you later.